The rise and fall of Michael Cooper. Michael Cooper stood at the pinnacle of his success, staring out at the sprawling cityscape from the balcony of his luxury high-rise apartment in downtown Chicago. The city lights below glittered like tiny stars, mirroring the wealth and power he had accumulated over the years. But as the cool evening breeze brushed against his face, a nagging emptiness gnawed at his heart, a hollowness he could no longer ignore. From humble beginnings, Michael had clawed his way to the top. Born to a modest merchant father and a hard-working seamstress mother, his childhood was marked by struggle. Every penny was earned with sweat and sacrifice, and every meal was a reminder of their fragile financial state. But amidst the adversity, his parents instilled in him a fierce determination to rise above his circumstances. "Never let the world tell you what you're worth," his father had once said. Those words became Michael's mantra as he navigated the rough streets of Chicago's South Side. Fueled by ambition, he worked tirelessly, earning scholarships and accolades that eventually opened the doors to elite universities and corporate boardrooms. By the time Michael was 35, he was the CEO of Cooper Enterprises, a real estate empire that dominated the Chicago skyline. He had it all: a beautiful wife, Lily, who had supported him through every trial, a penthouse apartment that screamed opulence, and a reputation as a force to be reckoned with in the business world. But success, he would come to learn, had its price. Lily had been his rock. They'd met during his college years when he was juggling part-time jobs and a heavy course load. She had been a steadying presence, her quiet strength and unwavering belief in his dreams anchoring him during his most turbulent times. They married young, their modest wedding a reflection of their shared belief in love over material wealth. As Michael's career soared, their relationship began to shift. The long nights and endless meetings became routine, and Lily's pleas for quality time were drowned out by his relentless pursuit of success. She had given up her own aspirations to support his dreams, yet her sacrifices went unnoticed as Michael became consumed by his work. It was during this time of disconnect that Sophie Miller entered his life. Sophie was the opposite of Lily in almost every way. Bold, ambitious, and magnetic, she represented everything Michael thought he wanted. She was a high-powered executive who thrived in the fast-paced world he now inhabited. Their whirlwind romance was exhilarating, a stark contrast to the routine and stability Lily offered. Blinded by Sophie's allure and his own hubris, Michael made a decision that would unravel the life he had built. He left Lily. The divorce was swift and brutal. Lily, devastated but determined, walked away with her dignity intact. Michael, convinced that he was chasing happiness, moved in with Sophie and threw himself further into his work. At first, the new chapter seemed promising. Michael and Sophie attended lavish galas, vacationed in exotic locations, and basked in the admiration of their social circle. But the novelty wore off quickly. Sophie's fiery energy began to feel suffocating, and their relationship, built on surface-level excitement, started to crack. Michael found himself longing for the simplicity and warmth of his life with Lily. Nights in the penthouse felt colder, the city lights less dazzling. He began to see the hollowness of his achievements, the price of his relentless ambition. Lily, meanwhile, was charting a new path. While the pain of their separation lingered, she refused to let it define her. Reconnecting with her love for photography, she began capturing moments of raw beauty and emotion. Her work gained recognition in local galleries, and she found solace in the quiet rhythm of her craft. Then came the news that would change everything. Lily was pregnant, with twins. The revelation was a mixture of fear and hope. For Lily, the twins represented a new beginning, a chance to build a life of love and purpose. For Michael, it was a wake-up call that struck with the force of a lightning bolt. Standing on his balcony, clutching a glass of whiskey, Michael's mind was a storm of regret and longing. He had chosen ambition over love, traded stability for excitement, and in the process, lost the only person who had truly believed in him. But as the night stretched on, a faint glimmer of hope emerged. Perhaps it wasn't too late to make amends. Michael's journey of redemption was about to begin, though the road ahead would be anything but easy. Lily's quiet rebirth. Lily Cooper stood in the soft light of her studio apartment, her hands resting gently on her growing belly. The faint hum of traffic from the street below was a soothing backdrop to her quiet evening. A collection of photographs hung on the walls, images of cityscapes, serene parks, and candid portraits of strangers. Each picture told a story, much like the one she now found herself living. After the divorce, Lily had faced a whirlwind of emotions, heartbreak, anger, and a deep sense of loss. The man she had once trusted with her heart had left her for another, and the life they had built together now felt like a distant dream. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a seed of resilience began to grow within her. Determined not to let her circumstances define her, Lily turned to photography, a passion she had set aside years ago. She dusted off her old camera, the one Michael had gifted her on their first anniversary, and began to see the world through its lens once more. It was as if the camera gave her permission to rediscover beauty in a life that had felt shattered. Lily threw herself into her work, attending workshops and reconnecting with the local art community. Her photographs began to gain attention, earning her a small but loyal following. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of purpose that was entirely her own. It was during one of her late-night editing sessions that Lily's world shifted yet again. She had been feeling unusually fatigued and lightheaded for weeks, dismissing it as stress from her new routine. But when the symptoms persisted, she decided to see her doctor. The news came as a shock. "Congratulations, Mrs. Cooper," the doctor had said, her voice warm but matter-of-fact. "You're pregnant, with twins." Lily stared at the ultrasound screen, her heart pounding as she watched two tiny heartbeats flicker. The news was overwhelming, a mix of fear, joy, and disbelief. Her first instinct was to question how she would manage this alone, but as the initial shock subsided, a quiet determination began to take root. These babies would be her fresh start. The following weeks were a flurry of preparations. Lily read every book she could find on pregnancy and parenting, joined online support groups for single mothers, and attended prenatal classes. Though she felt the weight of doing it all alone, the kicks and movements of her unborn children filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Her photography began to reflect her inner transformation. The once dark and brooding images she favored gave way to lighter, more hopeful compositions. She captured moments of quiet beauty, a child laughing with their parent in the park, the golden glow of sunlight streaming through a window, and a stray flower growing between cracks in the pavement. Her work was soon noticed by a prominent local gallery, which invited her to showcase her photos in an upcoming exhibit. The opportunity was both thrilling and terrifying, but Lily embraced it as a sign that she was on the right path. Meanwhile, her interactions with Michael remained minimal. He had been largely absent since the divorce, consumed by his new life with Sophie. Lily hadn't told him about the pregnancy, unsure of how, or even if, he fit into the picture she was creating for herself and her children. But fate had a way of forcing unresolved matters to the surface. One evening, Lily was sitting at her kitchen table, reviewing prints for her exhibit, when a sharp pain shot through her abdomen. Her breath caught, and panic set in. She reached for her phone and dialed her friend Jenna, who lived nearby. "Jenna, I think something's wrong," Lily said, her voice trembling. Jenna arrived within minutes and drove Lily to the hospital. As they waited for the doctor, Lily's thoughts raced. She couldn't lose her babies, not after everything she had been through. The doctor assured her it was a minor complication, likely brought on by stress, but advised her to take it easy in the coming weeks. Relieved but shaken, Lily promised herself she would do whatever it took to protect her children. Word of Lily's hospital visit eventually reached Michael through Jenna, who still harbored hope that he could redeem himself. Michael, who had been grappling with his own regrets, was stunned to learn that Lily was not only pregnant but carrying twins. The revelation hit him like a tidal wave. Memories of their life together flooded his mind. Their shared dreams, the love they once had, and the promises he had broken. For the first time, he saw the magnitude of what he had lost, and the weight of his choices pressed heavily on his chest. Michael knew he had to see her, to offer his support, even if he wasn't sure it would be welcomed. When Michael arrived at the hospital, he was directed to a small private room where Lily rested. His heart pounded as he stepped inside, unsure of what to expect. Lily looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and guardedness. "Michael," she said softly, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "I came as soon as I heard," he said, his voice unsteady. Are you okay?" Lily nodded, her gaze steady but distant. "I'm fine. The babies are fine." For a moment, the room was filled with an awkward silence. Michael struggled to find the right words, while Lily grappled with the emotions his presence stirred. "I didn't know," Michael finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, "about the twins. Lily, I should have been there." "It doesn't matter now," Lily replied, her tone calm but firm. "I've been managing just fine on my own." Her words stung, but Michael couldn't argue with them. He had abandoned her when she needed him most, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions. As he left the hospital that evening, Michael felt a spark of determination. He couldn't change the past, but he could fight for a place in their future. Lily, meanwhile, returned home with a renewed sense of clarity. The encounter with Michael had stirred up old wounds, but it had also reminded her of the strength she had gained. She wasn't the same woman who had been left behind. She was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next. As the weeks passed, Lily focused on her exhibit and prepared for the arrival of her twins. Every step forward was a testament to her resilience, a quiet victory over the pain she had endured. Michael's journey, however, was just beginning. Michael's quest for redemption. Michael Cooper sat in the corner of a dimly lit cafe, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. His thoughts were a tangled mess of regret, longing, and determination. The revelation that Lily was pregnant with twins had shaken him to his core, peeling back the layers of his carefully constructed life and exposing the emptiness that lay beneath. The conversation with Lily at the hospital replayed in his mind repeatedly. Her calm yet distant demeanor haunted him, her words cutting deeper than she likely realized. For years, Michael had convinced himself that his decisions were justified, that his relentless pursuit of success was for the greater good. But now, faced with the reality of the life he had left behind, he saw his choices for what they truly were: selfish and short-sighted. Michael knew he had to change, not just for Lily or the twins, but for himself. Confronting his past. The first step was acknowledging the root of his mistakes. Michael reached out to his sister, Grace, who had always been his voice of reason. Their relationship had grown strained over the years, largely due to his obsession with work and status. Grace had stayed grounded in their South Side neighborhood, working as a teacher and maintaining close ties with the community they grew up in. When Michael called her, Grace was hesitant but agreed to meet. Sitting across from her in her modest kitchen, he felt a pang of guilt for how distant he had become. "I need your help, Grace," he began, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Grace raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Help with what, Michael?" "Fixing the mess you made with Lily." Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know I messed up. I don't know how to fix it. I want to be there for her, for the twins, but I don't even know where to start." Grace studied him for a moment before leaning back in her chair. "Start by listening. Stop trying to control everything and just show up. Actions speak louder than words, Michael. You can't undo what you've done, but you can prove you're serious about being better." Her words stayed with him as he left her house. Michael realized that he couldn't rush the process. Redemption wouldn't come overnight. It would take patience, humility, and consistent effort. Taking the first steps. Michael's first act of sincerity was small but meaningful. He reached out to Lily, asking if they could meet to discuss the twins. She agreed, though her tone remained cautious. They met at a quiet park, the neutral setting easing some of the tension between them. As they sat on a bench overlooking the playground, Michael struggled to find the right words. "I want to be involved, Lily," he said finally. "I know I don't deserve your trust, but I want to be there for Matthew and Sarah. Whatever it takes." Lily looked at him, her expression unreadable. "This isn't about earning my trust, Michael. It's about being consistent. If you're serious about this, you need to prove it, not to me, but to them." Her words echoed Grace's advice, reinforcing the path Michael knew he needed to take. Over the next few weeks, Michael began taking concrete steps to prepare for fatherhood. He attended parenting classes, read books on infant care, and even joined an online support group for new fathers. The process was humbling, forcing him to confront just how much he didn't know. Letting go of the old life. As Michael delved deeper into his journey of self-improvement, his relationship with Sophie began to crumble. Their once exciting romance had long since lost its spark, and the growing distance between them was impossible to ignore. One evening, after yet another argument, Sophie confronted him. "You're not here, Michael," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "You're always distracted, always somewhere else. This isn't working anymore." Michael didn't argue. He knew she was right. Their relationship had been built on a shaky foundation, and it was time to let it go. "I'm sorry, Sophie," he said quietly. "You deserve someone who can give you what you need. I'm not that person." The breakup, while painful, felt like a necessary step toward the life Michael wanted to build. It was a clean slate, a chance to focus on what truly mattered: rebuilding bridges. Michael's efforts didn't stop with Lily and the twins. He also sought to mend his relationship with Grace and reconnect with the community he had left behind. He began volunteering at a local community center, mentoring at-risk youth, and sharing his story of perseverance and redemption. The experience was eye-opening. Working with the teenagers reminded him of his own struggles growing up and reignited a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about giving back. It was about rediscovering who he was beyond the wealth and status. One of the boys he mentored, Jamal, reminded Michael of himself at a younger age. Bright but guarded, Jamal had dreams of escaping his circumstances, but lacked guidance. Michael took him under his wing, helping him apply for scholarships and explore career options. Through these interactions, Michael began to see the impact of his actions ripple outward. It wasn't just about repairing his own life. It was about creating a positive legacy. A fragile truce. Lily watched Michael's transformation with a mixture of admiration and skepticism. He was showing up for parenting meetings, asking thoughtful questions, and making an effort to be present. But the wounds of their past couldn't be erased so easily. One evening, after a particularly long day, Michael stopped by Lily's apartment to drop off supplies for the twins. As they stood in the doorway, Lily hesitated before speaking. "You're trying, Michael. I see that," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But this is about more than showing up. Trust takes time." Michael nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Lily. I just want to do right by you and the twins." Their conversation marked a turning point. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a step toward rebuilding the foundation they had lost. As Michael continued to navigate the challenges of fatherhood, his determination to prove himself only grew stronger. He wasn't just striving to be a better father, he was striving to be a better man. The road ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time in years, Michael felt like he was moving in the right direction. The fragile dance of co-parenting. Lily Cooper stood in the nursery she had painstakingly prepared over the past few months. The soft, muted tones of sage green and white created a soothing atmosphere, while delicate mobiles hung above two matching cribs. She ran her fingers over the edge of one crib, her heart swelling with both anticipation and trepidation. The twins, Matthew and Sarah, would arrive any day now. Each kick, each flutter of movement reminded Lily of the new life she was about to embark on, one filled with joy, uncertainty, and the weight of doing it alone. Or perhaps not entirely alone. Michael had been making an effort, and Lily couldn't deny it. His actions spoke louder than his words. He attended every doctor's appointment she invited him to, took parenting classes, and even rearranged his work schedule to accommodate her needs. Yet despite his efforts, a wall remained between them, a wall built from years of neglect, betrayal, and hurt. Small steps, big challenges. Michael was equally aware of the invisible barrier that separated them. He knew that regaining Lily's trust would take time, but he was determined to earn his place in her life and the lives of their children. His days became a blur of preparation. Setting up a second nursery in his apartment, attending therapy to confront his past mistakes, and learning everything he could about parenting. But the path wasn't without its challenges. Co-parenting required communication, compromise, and a level of emotional vulnerability that neither Michael nor Lily was entirely comfortable with. Their interactions, though civil, often carried an underlying tension. Michael would ask about the twins' health or offer to help with errands, and Lily's responses, while polite, were guarded. They avoided discussing their past, focusing instead on the logistics of parenthood. One evening, as they sat in Lily's living room finalizing a schedule for the twins' first few weeks, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "You've been involved," Lily said cautiously, her eyes fixed on the papers in front of her. "More than I thought you would be." Michael looked up, surprised by her admission. "I want to be here, Lily. For them. And for you. In whatever way you'll allow." Lily's gaze met his, her expression unreadable. "This isn't about us, Michael. It's about them. They deserve parents who put their needs first." "I know," he replied softly. "But I also know that I have a lot to make up for. I just hope I can prove to you, and to them, that I'm serious about this." The moment hung heavy between them, filled with unspoken emotions and fragile hope. The arrival of Matthew and Sarah, the day the twins were born, was both chaotic and miraculous. Lily had gone into labor in the early hours of the morning, and Michael had rushed to the hospital the moment Jenna called him. In the delivery room, Michael stood by Lily's side, holding her hand as she braved the pain with remarkable strength. For hours, he watched in awe as she brought their children into the world. When the cries of Matthew and Sarah filled the room, a flood of emotions washed over him. Relief, gratitude, and a love so profound it left him speechless. Lily, exhausted but glowing, held each baby in her arms, her eyes shining with tears. For a brief moment, all the pain and resentment between them melted away, replaced by the shared joy of welcoming their children into the world. Michael took turns holding the twins, marveling at their tiny fingers and delicate features. It was a moment of connection he hadn't realized he craved, and it solidified his resolve to be the father they deserved. Navigating new roles. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and learning curves. Lily quickly adapted to her role as a mother, her natural instincts guiding her through the chaos. Michael, though less experienced, was eager to help in any way he could. He visited daily, bringing meals, running errands, and taking on as many responsibilities as Lily allowed. He cherished every moment he spent with the twins, from soothing their cries in the middle of the night to marveling at their tiny smiles. But the demands of co-parenting also highlighted the complexities of their relationship. Lily's independence often clashed with Michael's desire to be more involved, leading to moments of tension. One afternoon, as Michael arrived with a box of supplies for the twins, Lily sighed. "You don't have to keep bringing things, Michael. We're fine." "I know you're fine," he replied, setting the box down. "But I want to contribute. I want to help." Lily crossed her arms, her expression softening slightly. "It's not about the stuff, Michael. It's about showing up and staying consistent." Michael nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words. "I'm here, Lily, and I'm not going anywhere." A glimmer of connection. Despite the challenges, there were moments of connection that hinted at the possibility of healing. One evening, as they sat together watching the twins sleep, Lily shared a story about her photography exhibit. "I didn't think I'd ever have the courage to put myself out there," she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "But it felt freeing." Michael smiled. "I always knew you had talent, Lily. I'm glad you're finally letting the world see it." Lily glanced at him, surprised by his sincerity. "Thank you," she said quietly. It was a small exchange, but it marked a shift in their dynamic, a step toward rebuilding the trust that had been lost. Building a new foundation. As the weeks turned into months, Michael and Lily settled into a rhythm. They coordinated schedules, shared responsibilities, and worked together to create a stable environment for Matthew and Sarah. Michael's efforts extended beyond the practical. He continued his work at the community center, drawing inspiration from the youth he mentored. He also sought advice from his therapist, who encouraged him to focus on being present rather than dwelling on the past. Lily, meanwhile, embraced her dual roles as a mother and an artist. Her photography gained more recognition, and she began to see herself not just as someone who had been left behind, but as someone who had risen above her circumstances. Their journey was far from over, but both Michael and Lily began to see the possibility of a new chapter, one defined not by their past mistakes, but by their shared commitment to their children and to growth. The tides of change. Lily Cooper stood at the edge of the park, watching as Matthew and Sarah wobbled unsteadily on their tiny legs, their giggles filling the crisp autumn air. Their twin strollers sat abandoned nearby, their contents spilling out onto the grass, spare blankets, bottles, and snacks. Lily clutched a camera, instinctively lifting it to capture the moment. Through the lens, she watched as Michael knelt beside Matthew, gently encouraging him to take another step. Sarah, ever the bold one, had already toddled ahead, chasing a falling leaf with single-minded determination. Lily lowered the camera and let out a soft sigh. She couldn't deny that Michael was trying. He was present at every opportunity, helping with bedtime routines, attending pediatric appointments, and even showing up uninvited to help when Lily was overwhelmed. Yet, as much as his consistency impressed her, she struggled to reconcile the man he was now with the man who had once shattered her trust. A new kind of partnership. Over the months, Lily and Michael's co-parenting relationship evolved into something almost seamless. They divided responsibilities with ease, rarely arguing over the details of who would do what. When disagreements arose, they handled them with a calmness that belied their history. One evening, as they met at Lily's apartment to discuss holiday plans, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "I was thinking we could alternate holidays," Michael suggested, sipping from a mug of tea Lily had handed him. "That seems fair," Lily replied, scribbling notes in her planner. There was a pause, and Michael hesitated before speaking again. "But, if you prefer, we could spend some of them together. For the twins' sake." Lily's pen hovered over the page as she looked up at him. "Together? You mean all of us?" Michael nodded. "I know it might be awkward, but I think it could be good for Matthew and Sarah. They deserve to see their parents getting along." Lily considered his words carefully. It wasn't an unreasonable suggestion, and part of her appreciated his willingness to prioritize the twins' emotional well-being. Still, the idea of spending extended time with Michael stirred a mix of emotions. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her tone measured. Michael accepted her response with a small nod, though he couldn't hide the hope in his eyes. The shadows of the past. Despite the progress they had made, the specter of their past still lingered. For Lily, the wounds of betrayal were a constant undercurrent, a reminder to remain cautious. For Michael, the guilt of his actions weighed heavily, driving his determination to prove he was no longer the man who had walked away. One afternoon, as they prepared for the twins' first birthday party, an unspoken tension hung in the air. Michael had offered to help set up decorations, and Lily reluctantly agreed. As they worked side by side, hanging streamers, and inflating balloons, the silence grew increasingly uncomfortable. "Do you ever think about us?" Michael asked suddenly, his voice breaking the quiet. Lily froze, the balloon she was holding slipping from her fingers. She turned to face him, her expression guarded. "Why would you ask that?" Michael shrugged, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Because I do. I think about what we had, and what I ruined." Lily took a deep breath, her emotions warring within her. Part of her wanted to lash out, to remind him of the pain he had caused. But another part of her, the part that had grown stronger and more independent, refused to dwell on the past. "Michael," she began, her tone steady, "we can't change what happened. And honestly, I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again. But right now, the only thing that matters is being the best parents we can be for Matthew and Sarah." Her words were firm but not unkind, and Michael nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "You're right. I needed to say it. I'm sorry, Lily. For everything." Lily offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Thank you. But actions speak louder than words." A shared victory. The twins' first birthday party was a modest but joyous affair, held at Lily's apartment. Close friends and family gathered to celebrate, filling the space with laughter and warmth. Matthew and Sarah were the stars of the show, delighting everyone with their curious expressions and tiny hands reaching for colorful balloons. Michael had gone all out, baking the cake himself, an effort that surprised and touched Lily more than she was willing to admit. The cake wasn't perfect, its frosting slightly uneven, but the twins didn't seem to mind as they gleefully dug their hands into it. As the party wound down and the guests began to leave, Lily found herself standing beside Michael in the quiet aftermath. The twins were fast asleep in their cribs, and the apartment was littered with wrapping paper and empty plates. "You did a good job today," Lily said, breaking the silence. Michael looked at her, his expression soft. "So did you. They're lucky to have you." Lily felt a flicker of warmth at his words, but she quickly pushed it aside. She wasn't ready to lower her walls. Not yet. The turning point. The weeks that followed were marked by subtle but meaningful changes. Michael continued to show up, not just physically but emotionally. He was patient with the twins' tantrums, attentive to their needs, and increasingly thoughtful in his interactions with Lily. One evening, as he dropped off groceries for the week, he noticed a framed photograph on Lily's kitchen counter. It was one of her own, a black and white image of a mother cradling her child, their faces illuminated by soft, natural light. "This is beautiful," Michael said, picking up the frame. Lily glanced at it, a hint of pride in her expression. "It's part of a series I'm working on. I've been submitting them to galleries." "You should be proud," Michael said sincerely. "You've always had an eye for capturing moments like this." Lily studied him for a moment, searching for any trace of insincerity. When she found none, she felt a small crack in her defenses. "Thank you," she said softly. A glimmer of hope. As time went on, Lily and Michael found themselves sharing more moments of connection. They still had their differences, but the walls between them began to erode, bit by bit. One afternoon, as they walked through the park with the twins, Michael spoke up. "I know I have a long way to go, but I want you to know I'm in this for the long haul. Not just for Matthew and Sarah, but for us. Whatever us might look like." Lily didn't respond immediately, her gaze fixed on the twins as they played. Finally, she turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "I don't know what the future holds, Michael," she said. "But I do know this. You're showing up. And that means something." It wasn't a promise, but it was a start. A fragile, tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild something from the ashes of their past. Crisis and redemption. The early morning light filtered through the curtains of Lily's apartment as Matthew and Sarah played on the living room rug. Their laughter echoed through the space, a sound that had become the heartbeat of Lily's days. Michael sat cross-legged on the floor, stacking blocks with Sarah, who was determined to knock them down faster than he could build. "Sarah, give me a break," Michael said with mock exasperation, prompting another round of giggles from her. Matthew, meanwhile, was engrossed with a toy truck, his quiet focus a stark contrast to his sister's boundless energy. Lily leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping her coffee and watching the scene unfold. It was moments like these that made her heart ache with conflicting emotions. Michael had transformed in ways she hadn't anticipated, and his bond with the twins was undeniable. Yet, the scars of their past still lingered, a quiet reminder of the pain she had endured. A sudden emergency. The day took an unexpected turn when Sarah began to cry inconsolably during lunch. At first, Lily thought it was just fatigue or hunger, but when her tiny body began to feel unusually warm, alarm bells went off. "She's burning up," Lily said, her voice tinged with panic as she pressed a cool cloth to Sarah's forehead. Michael rushed to her side, his own concern evident. "Let's take her to the hospital. Now." Within minutes, they were on their way, the twins' car seats secured in the back. Matthew, sensing the tension, sat quietly, his wide eyes darting between his parents. Sarah's cries grew weaker, and Lily fought to keep her composure, her hands trembling as she stroked her daughter's hand. The drive to the hospital felt like an eternity. Michael's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw clenched as he navigated through the bustling Chicago streets. "She's going to be okay," he said, more to himself than to Lily. Lily nodded, though her mind raced with worst-case scenarios. The long night. The hospital was a blur of bright lights, hurried footsteps, and medical jargon. A nurse ushered them into a private room, where a pediatrician examined Sarah. "Her fever is high, but we'll run some tests to rule out anything serious," the doctor said, her tone reassuring but professional. As they waited for the results, Lily paced the room, her anxiety mounting with every passing minute. Michael sat in a chair holding Sarah, who had finally fallen asleep, her flushed face resting against his chest. "I should have noticed sooner," Lily said, her voice cracking. "What if something's really wrong?" "Lily, stop," Michael said firmly but gently. "You're an amazing mom. This isn't your fault." His words were a lifeline, and for the first time, Lily allowed herself to lean on him, if only for a moment. Hours later, the doctor returned with good news. Sarah's fever was the result of a common virus and would subside with rest and medication. The relief was palpable, and Lily felt tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Michael placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "She's going to be okay, Lily." A shared vulnerability. That night, after Sarah had been discharged and was resting peacefully at home, Michael stayed to help. He insisted on taking turns checking on her throughout the night, even as Lily protested. Around midnight, they found themselves sitting in the dimly lit living room, the silence between them heavy but not uncomfortable. "Tonight was a wake-up call," Michael said quietly. "I don't ever want to take any of this for granted, being here, being part of their lives." Lily looked at him, her defenses momentarily lowered. "You've changed, Michael. I can see it, but I'm still scared. I'm scared to let you in, only to lose you again." Michael met her gaze, his expression earnest. "I know I've hurt you, Lily, more than I can ever make up for, but I'm not the man I was. I'm not asking for forgiveness, not yet. I'm just asking for a chance to keep proving myself, one day at a time." Lily nodded slowly, her heart conflicted but softening. "One day at a time," she repeated, the faintest hint of a smile on her lips. New beginnings. The weeks following Sarah's illness brought subtle but profound changes to their dynamic. Lily began to let her guard down, allowing Michael to take on more responsibilities and play a greater role in their lives. Their conversations grew more open, and moments of shared laughter became more frequent. One sunny afternoon, they took the twins to the zoo. As Matthew marveled at the giraffes, and Sarah clapped excitedly at the sight of penguins, Lily found herself stealing glances at Michael. He was attentive, patient, and fully present, a stark contrast to the man who had once prioritized ambition over family. "Michael," she said as they watched the twins share a bag of crackers on a nearby bench, "you're good with them. They adore you." Michael smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude. "They've changed me, Lily. They've given me something I didn't know I was missing. A reason to be better." Lily nodded, her own emotions swirling. She wasn't ready to completely open her heart to him again, but she couldn't deny that he was earning her trust, step by step. A promising future. On the twins' second birthday, Lily hosted a small gathering at her apartment. Friends and family filled the space, their laughter echoing through the halls. Michael arrived early, carrying a homemade cake that, while slightly lopsided, was a hit with the toddlers. As they stood side by side watching Matthew and Sarah blow out their candles, Lily felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The past still lingered, but it no longer defined her. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the twins were asleep, Michael helped Lily clean up. As they worked in companionable silence, he turned to her. "Lily, I know we've come a long way, but I also know there's still a long road ahead. I'm not giving up, not on them, and not on us." Lily looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I see that, Michael, and while I can't promise anything, I can say this: you're not the same man you used to be. And that's a good thing." It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was a start, a fragile foundation upon which they could build something new. As the weeks turned into months, Michael and Lily continued to navigate their new roles, their bond strengthening with each shared milestone. The scars of their past would always be a part of their story, but together they were creating a future defined not by regret, but by resilience, love, and hope. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, it felt like they were on the right path, a path toward healing, redemption, and perhaps even a second chance at the love they had once shared. A new chapter begins. Months passed, and the rhythm of Michael and Lily's lives began to feel less like a delicate balancing act and more like a partnership. They co-parented with increasing ease, their once guarded conversations evolving into moments of honest dialogue and mutual respect. Michael had fully embraced his role as a father. He attended every milestone with pride. From Matthew's first scribbled drawings to Sarah's delighted squeals as she learned to say new words, his presence in their lives became as constant as the sunrise, an anchor of stability and love that even Lily could not ignore. But for all the progress they had made, there was still an unspoken question lingering between them. Could they ever rebuild what they had lost? A moment of crisis. One evening, Michael arrived at Lily's apartment to pick up the twins for an overnight visit. He noticed that Lily looked pale and tired, her movements slower than usual. "Lily, are you feeling okay?" he asked, concern etched across his face. She waved him off, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm fine, just a little tired. It's been a long week." But as she reached for Matthew's bag, her knees buckled, and Michael was at her side in an instant. "Lily," he exclaimed, helping her to the couch. "I'm okay," she insisted weakly, though her trembling hands betrayed her. Michael wasn't convinced. "You're not okay. I'm taking you to the hospital." Though she protested, Michael's determination won out. He called Jenna to stay with the twins and rushed Lily to the emergency room. Facing vulnerability. At the hospital, the doctors determined that Lily was suffering from exhaustion and mild dehydration, compounded by stress. As she rested in the hospital bed, Michael sat beside her, his hand gently clasping hers. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked, his voice filled with a mixture of frustration and concern. Lily sighed, her eyes heavy with fatigue. "Because I didn't want to burden anyone. I'm supposed to be strong, Michael. For the twins. For myself." "You don't have to do it all alone," he said softly. "You have me. And I'm not going anywhere." For the first time, Lily allowed herself to fully believe his words. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the unwavering resolve that had replaced the man who once chased ambition at the expense of everything else. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The turning point. Lily's recovery was a slow process, but it brought about a deeper connection between her and Michael. He stepped in to shoulder more of the parenting responsibilities, taking the twins to and from daycare, preparing meals, and even helping with Lily's photography work. Their shared experiences during this time brought them closer, breaking down the final walls that had kept them at arm's length. They began spending more time together, not just for the twins' sake, but because they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. One evening, as they sat on Lily's balcony watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Michael turned to her. "I've been thinking," he began hesitantly, "about everything we've been through and where we are now." Lily glanced at him, her expression soft but cautious. "And I know I can't undo the past, but I want to build a future with you, Lily, not just as co-parents, but as partners, as a family." Lily's heart raced at his words. She had been waiting for this moment, yet now that it was here, she felt a mix of emotions, fear, hope, and a tentative sense of joy. "I don't know if I can just forget everything that happened," she admitted, "but I see how much you've changed, Michael, and maybe we can try." Michael's face lit up with a cautious smile. "One day at a time." Lily nodded, her lips curving into a small but genuine smile. One day at a time. A new beginning. Over the following months, Michael and Lily worked together to redefine their relationship. It wasn't always easy. Trust had to be rebuilt brick by brick, and old wounds occasionally resurfaced. But their shared love for Matthew and Sarah provided a foundation of hope and purpose. On a crisp spring afternoon, they took the twins to the park. As Matthew and Sarah played on the swings, Michael reached for Lily's hand. She didn't pull away, and their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had never been apart. "I think we're going to be okay," Lily said softly, her gaze on their children. Michael squeezed her hand gently. "I know we will be." As they stood together, watching their twins laugh and play, the weight of the past seemed to lift. They weren't the same people they had once been, but maybe that was a good thing. They had grown, learned, and rediscovered what truly mattered. Their story wasn't one of perfection or fairy tale endings. It was a story of resilience, forgiveness, and the possibility of love rekindled, not despite their scars, but because of them. And as they walked away from the park, hand in hand, Michael and Lily knew they were finally ready to embrace their second chance.